The following podcast may contain adult language and an abundance of salt. So get ready, nerds, because we're talking to the creators of the Wyrmwood universe on today's podcast. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm joined, as always, by my fantastic panel of nerds talking about Wyrmwood, Road of the Dead, and Apocalypse. Matt Vader is here, the reason why we are here today. Welcome, sir. What's up?
Hi, man. I'm kind of nervous.
This started out?
I know. It was like, hey, man, I saw this really bonkers ass trailer on YouTube. Check this shit out. And
we fell in love.
We all.
What is this? Yeah, so there it is, man. So
all right, ambassador of estrogen and tech support, Jude is here.
Oh, Jesus.
Your emotional support redhead.
Yes. Yeah. What's up, Jude? How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
These movies are right up your alley.
Oh,
so.
for sure. Yeah, I remember when we saw the trailer for this and we lost our minds.
Yeah.
So here we are today. This is crazy. And the man behind the curtain, Matthew Kadish. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. And I've got a lot of questions for our guests because I'm fascinated by the story behind the making of these movies. I'm really looking forward to getting to talk to them about it.
Yep. And the guest of honor today, Kiah Roache-Turner. Welcome, sir, the writer and director of Wyrmwood, Road of the Dead, and Wyrmwood Apocalypse. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here, guys. And first up, I'd just like to say that it was, sorry, that's my son coughing in the background. He's got like preemptive zombie disease. So if he, turns and bites my throat out like in the next 20 minutes, this is going to be a hell of a podcast.
Go get that methane mask.
My composer sent me the YouTube thing that you did on Wyrmwood, Road of the Dead. And it actually meant a lot to me. I'm not going to bullshit you. Like when you guys, it was unabashedly happy. Like pretty much all of you guys really loved it. And you had a lot of things to say about it in terms of why you loved it. And you really picked it apart. And it came to me at a kind of a dark point because, like, I don't know if you guys know anything about the ebbs and flows and rhythms of filmmaking. Is like, it's pretty bad. Like, you make a film and it's all awesome, and then for a big chunk of time, there's sort of nothing, and it's difficult. And Wyrmwood Apocalypse is doing quite well in the US at the moment, but when I was listening to your podcast, it doesn't do well in Australia. People don't pay for it. What they do is they wait for it to come out on Netflix and iTunes and then they jump in. But for some reason, Australians won't pay for horror. So it didn't super do well in my native country. And weirdly, the critics always give me shit because for some reason, Australian snobby critics, I should say, don't like horror. So, the reviews weren't amazing. The reviews are amazing everywhere else, but I have to wait for it to go global. And so when I listened to your podcast, I was feeling a bit shit. And you guys actually, for 45 minutes, made me feel really good about myself as a filmmaker. So I don't want to push past that and go, actually, sometimes when you get a really positive podcast like that, it actually makes a difference. And it makes me think I really should keep making films. So that's why I'm here, because you guys showed me the love and I appreciate it.
We
so glad.
We were hooked by the first time we watched the trailer for Apocalypse. We all were like, what is this masterpiece? We have to go find out.
Yeah.
And we dug up Road of the Dead, which is like, it's not the easiest film to find. And we found
it's a little easier now.
It's easier now. Yeah. And when Apocalypse came out, because we had a podcast lined up for like a zombie week thing.
We had a whole show built around Wyrmwood. We thought both of them were out, but only the first one was.
Yeah.
So we had to like scramble and be like, okay, well, just zombie week, and because we really wanted to watch Wyrmwood. We were like, well, we'll do Apocalypse later.
Yeah, and there are a bunch of movies on Amazon that have like Wyrmwood in the title, and it looks like they're related to your movies, but they're totally not.
Yeah, no. There's one really horrible zombie movie called Wyrmwood on Amazon Prime that I mistaken for yours, and I was watching it and I was like, this is terrible. and then I started watching your movie and I was like, there we go, this fits the bill.
I didn't know there was another zombie movie called Wyrmwood. Did you happen to find out when it came out? Is it pre 2015?
It's like a apocalypse movie, but
was it like Chernobyl?
But you know what?
Apocalypse zombies?
It doesn't use Wyrmwood spelt the same way. You guys use the Y. This one just is R whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a zombie movie, but I didn't watch it.
There was another movie called Wyrmwood, and maybe that's the one that you guys are talking about. When we decided to call ours Wyrmwood, so we just changed the spelling so we didn't get sued.
Yeah, it's called Dead Life, Wyrmwood's End. Anyway, But yeah, we fell in love with the first Road of the Dead. Can you tell us a little bit about how you, because from our research, we found out that it was kind of like a passion project. It took you guys years to make that first movie. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, I mean, it's all, it's all online. I mean, we basically made it the same way that Peter Jackson made Bad Taste, which is to say we funded it ourselves and made it mostly just with mates building stuff. Like all the guns you see are just carved out of wood and painted black, or just plastic stuff that you get at Woolworths. Like they're super soakers, like spray painted black. It's that kind of film. It took 3.5 years to shoot because we didn't go for funding. So we put all of our savings into it, and then we'd shoot a scene, and then we just wait 2 or 3 months to save more money to purchase more props and costumes and buy more, prosthetics. And then we'd go out for another weekend and we'd shoot another scene. Everybody had smashed themselves, sometimes Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, work late on a Sunday, and then drive back from the mountains into the city to start work at 8:30 on a Monday morning again. And then we just sort of leapfrogged through production. For 3.5 years we did that. And that's why, body weights fluctuate, beards get bigger and smaller, haircuts change across just scenes. The continuity is just insane. If you do the Wyrmwood drinking game, you will die of a liver because there's just so many continuity errors. But it moves at such a cracking pace, nobody notices. And so this is like a film. We even had a finished version of this film where I did all of the visual effects myself. So it was done and finished and ready to go for $160,000. And then Screen Australia came in, which is our funding body, and just said, look, we're going to throw in a big chunk of cash for you guys to go out and have it finished properly and get some of those dodgy digital effects redone a little bit, and get the sound mixed correctly, and it suddenly became a real film, and so that was the process.
So you mentioned Bad Taste, and I'm a huge fan of that movie. I have been since I was a teenager looking to go into film school. And I know that's very big in New Zealand and Australia, but my Philistines of co-hosts here,
I still have PTSD.
I absolutely hate that movie. So I was wondering, how big of an influence was Bad Taste on the first Wyrmwood film?
Huge, but I mean, we watched Bad Taste when we were kids, so I didn't give a shit about how it looked when I was like 12, and just it was the funniest thing in the world. Like, you watch that movie, and like there's a scene where he chainsaws through the top of an alien's head, like through the anus of the alien, pokes his head out from underneath the severed alien corpse, and screams, "I'm born again." The fuck do you not like that movie? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, come on. Exactly. And the thing I love about that movie is it starts and you're like, this looked like it was shot by a 13-year-old who doesn't even know how to use a camera. And then as it goes, you're like, wait a minute, did they just blow up a house? Is there a SWAT team? Like, they look like there's like 30 aliens running around with machine guns. It just lifts and lifts and lifts as Peter Jackson's like creativity and brain just expands and his ambition grows over 3.5 years. And that was the biggest influence. It's like, this guy starts with something that's clearly just a bunch of mates and a camera and some fake blood, and he ends by blowing up a house with a missile launcher. And I looked at that and I was like, this guy did this on his own in Wellington, in the 80s, with a 16mm Bolex camera that he bought from the local chemist. He did all the effects himself. He baked the alien heads in his oven, and his mum got the shits because he ruined her oven. Like, these are all like epic mythology. And the movie went to Cannes and got a massive like audience award. Like, that film got released and made money. And I was like, okay, so if this guy can do it, we can do it. And when the 5D Mark II came out, and I realized that I could purchase, a very cheap digital camera that effectively looks like 35mm film, there's no reason not to make a movie. And so that was the film. That and Evil Dead are the two films where I'm just like, okay, if you're a filmmaker and you've got friends who can build things and you don't mind getting very dirty and bloody and, putting your life on the line occasionally for a stunt, you can make, an action horror movie in your own backyard and have it make money. And that's weirdly what happened.
I think that's one of the things that really stood out for me with Road of the Dead was just, it doesn't look to me like it was made on a budget like that. it immediately comes out at me is like, check out this bonkers, crazy, splatter-filled zombie movie with all these crazy, cool new concepts. At least to us, anyway. It's a standout movie for me, and it immediately resonated with me. Unlike Mr. Kadish's and you guys' favorite filmmaker, but there's something about that movie I just can't get into. But that's okay.
It's the bowl of throw up that got me out. I was like, good.
You're either going to disconnect at that point or get sucked in. I fucking love the bowl of vomit. It's disgusting. And it's steaming. And they all have to... you watch the guy trying to retreat away from the bowl. And eventually... And then he comes out, he goes, guys, you'll never guess what I had to do. And the guy's like, did you have to eat a bowl of sick? And you're like, yeah. Like that kind of... New Zealand humour is like... I love it. Like New Zealand humour is Australian humour, but friendlier. You know what I mean? Australians flatten everything out. New Zealanders do exactly the same flat, ironic shit, but they've got the sing-song thing where everything's kind of cool and happy. Even if a New Zealander beats you to death, he's like, I'm going to have to do it. I'm really sorry. But, like, you kind of like him while he's doing it, I don't know. I mean, you're either in or you're out on that one. I love that movie, but I can understand why some people don't. I mean, it's very clunky,
Kiah, I wonder if you could settle a debate for us. So we've gone back and forth a couple of times trying to figure out what kind of beer is in the emergency kit in Road of the Dead. Is it Victoria Bitters?
VB, Victoria Bitter.
Victoria Bitters? Okay.
Victoria
yes. Somebody
Bitters.
on my TikTok, I posted a TikTok about the movie, and we thought it was Foster's, and he corrected me.
No, I heard your debate. Foster's is the shittest beer in Australia.
That's
Nobody but a cretinous
I thought that was part of the
arsehole will
joke.
drink Foster's. If you're in New South Wales and you're a bogan, which is our term for redneck, you drink VB. Like I grew up drinking VB, but it's shit beer. But it's just New South Welshmen drink VB because it's like a rite of passage and it makes you more Australian. Now, actually, VB stands for Victoria Bitter, but it actually stands for very bad in my head because very bad beer. It's shit beer, but that's what you drink if you're a man.
It's the Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yeah, it's PBR.
Yeah, it's
You just
PBR.
have to. If you're in Queensland, you drink 4X. If you're in New South Wales and you're a bogan, you drink VB. But really, if you're in New South Wales and you have any kind of if you're educated, you won't drink VB. If you've gone to school, you'll drink something nice.
So in the States, if you're what we call a redneck, in the States, you drink Pabst Blue Ribbon, PBR.
Or used to be Hams.
Yeah. That's kind of our VB for our side of the world.
And where does Budweiser sit for you guys?
Low tier of the ladder for
It's
sure.
like
it's no good.
A step above dirty water.
It's better than Bud Light.
It's a
Yeah. There's a Budweiser fan watching this right now, freaking out.
Yeah, we had a redneck episode one week, and we got a bunch of PBRs for the show to drink on the show because we were like, oh, well, you like embrace the. I've had the last PBR in the fridge for a year, and I'm like, I'm not touching it. I'll go buy new beer.
Oh, that was for Cabin Horror.
Yeah, Cabin Horror
Yeah,
Week.
yeah.
So we did Tucker and Dale versus Evil and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Jude and I have been talking about this. Like the rules of this zombie universe that you have created are so freaking bonkers. It breaks every like movie trope for a zombie movie that we have been watching. Is like that. I think that's one of the things that really sucked us into your films. Is like there ain't nothing else like this out there.
Right.
How did you come up with these ideas for this universe and like how the zombies give off methane and you can use them for fuel and like where did this all come from?
Beer. We just drank a lot of beer and came up with a bunch of bullshit. Which is I'm not being facetious. I think we were drunk when we wrote most of the earlier rules. My brother came up with the idea of zombies breathing methane, which I believe he got from a documentary called Food Inc., where he was like, he was watching this thing where the cows are farting so much that they're putting holes in the ozone layer above the earth. And he thought that was pretty funny. So, and I think in combination, if I'm fair, from the concept in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, where they're using the pig shit to power vehicles. And so my brother actually stumbled drunk to me in a corridor, and he goes, "What if the zombies breathed like a methane that could power the vehicles?" And when he said that, I knew we had a movie, and I was like, "Yeah, let's start writing it. We'll start shooting it as soon as we can."
You were like, Wormwood.
Well, it wasn't called Wyrmwood for a while. We didn't know what the fuck to call it. But at that, I just knew we had a movie, because if somebody said that to me, like, "Have you seen the movie where zombies breathe the methane and that powers Mad Max style vehicles?" I'm just like, I am fucking in. I just knew that concept had legs, and so I ran off and I had to come up with something cool. So I was like, well, what if somehow, through some kind of scientific experiments, we have like a hybrid half zombie who can control zombies with her mind. That was mine. And I was just like, okay, with those two together, I'm like, okay, we got something here. And also just the idea that, like, zombie films weren't big. So we were coming up with a lot of this stuff in 2009, 2010. And zombie films hadn't exploded at that point. All we had was a bunch of Romero stuff. I'm not even sure if Shaun of the Dead had come out at that point. And so it was kind of new when we started talking about it. And then, I mean, like, over the next, 5 to 10, or 3, 4, 5 years, zombies just became so prevalent that people were sick of them. And so it became even more important to have hooks that made a difference. But there had been enough zombie movies, all the Romero stuff and all of that, for there to still be a fair few zombie films at that point. But the thing that I couldn't believe was that nobody had combined a Mad Max aesthetic with the idea of zombies. Because if you've got a bunch of very slow moving, like really brain dead creatures walking slowly around you, and all you have to do is avoid them biting you, of course you would put on leathers and armor. All you need is a shotgun, a pickaxe, and like a big truck, and like, this could be fun. And so I think that was the thing that we had, where they just put on leather armor and hockey masks, and they run around with an axe and a baseball bat, and the idea that if you've got a bunch of mates who already don't mind a bit of healthy ultraviolence, you're going to have a good time. And that was our premise.
That scene where Benny and Barry first come up to that shed, and they're like surrounded by zombies, and they're like, "Hi, can we come in?" And they're like, "Yeah, come on over." Like that's that sense of humor that comes from the Australian and the New Zealand side of things, where it's just like the absurdity of the situation is what makes it funny. And the actors that you had in that scene just kind of really sold it. I had a ton of fun watching that part of the movie.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite bits in the film, to be honest, because it's just a beautifully underplayed moment. So in another, I don't want to say in an American movie, but I'm going to say in an American movie, it would be, we need to get in. There's zombies everywhere. It's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? You got to, like, it's going to be, he's like, there's zombies everywhere. Can I come in? And he's like, okay. Like, just fucking underplay. Yeah. They're walking pretty slowly. And I love the back and forth where he's like, well, how do we get in? And he's like, run around him. You know what I mean? Like, it's just an underplay. You don't need to, why don't you just fucking run around them? Like, they're idiots, I really love that moment. Although I actually, I think we stole the tone of that interchange from Mad Max 2. In fact, I know we did. There's a moment where somebody's talking to the mechanic, and he's like, how long do you need to fix the car? And the guy goes, 2 days. And he goes, you got 1. And he goes, okay. We literally stole that. And also, what was the other thing you mentioned? Yeah, the armoring up, where, it's like putting on the gloves and the helmet and, loading the weapons. And then it goes into close up on Barry, and he says, fuck yeah, and then moves on. I mean, that's a straight rip-off of the, Evil Dead 2 moment where, he's putting on his gloves and his armor and he's attaching the chainsaw, and, like, he, cocks his shotgun with one arm, and then it goes into close-up and he says, groovy. So, I mean, I've made a bit of a career from stealing from other directors, yeah.
It's called inspiration.
Yeah. If you had the opportunity, would you have Bruce Campbell in one of your Wyrmwood movies?
Oh yeah, I mean, back when Wyrmwood came out, there was talk of maybe I might be able to direct a few episodes of what was it? The Evil Dead TV series, and I was like, oh, I'll do it. I will fly myself over to New Zealand to do it. But I think I just missed out because I think they'd already cast the directors. But I really, really desperately wanted to direct on that one. I'd love to work with Bruce Campbell. He's a towering hero of mine.
So for me, when I'm watching a movie, I've said many times before, like I love horror movies. I especially love campy movies. So this really hit the nail on the head for me. I loved it. But for me, when I'm watching a movie, for me to get invested in it, I have to kind of believe and trust in where this is going. And this movie, straight from the beginning, it sets the rules and it creates the universe right away. And it was like immediately so easy to just be like, oh, okay, I know what this movie is and I know what the rules are and I can just fully dive into it and invest in it. And I just love that so much. I appreciate like the commitment to the rules of the universe that you created.
Yeah, I mean, it does have to have rules. But like if you get bogged down in exposition, you kill the film. We made a film called Necrotronic, and it was our first studio film. And all of the notes that we got from our co-producers and all the studio notes and stuff were all about we need more exposition. Explain yourselves, set the world up, exposition, explain yourselves. And I just like, I fucking hate exposition. I hate it. To me, it's the death of everything. And so one of the things that we've worked very hard at in Wyrmwood is to come up with these very, very big themes and ideas and concepts that are on surface ridiculous, but very fun. And then really try to use the minimum amount of words to explain them. Because my feeling is if you can't explain something by just showing it, then it's probably too complicated and you shouldn't have it. I'll leave that shit up to, Nolan and his brother, like, I like fun concepts that you get pretty quick. And in Apocalypse, like we don't even bother to explain it. Like it's just like, okay, you need to work out visually that these zombies are powering vehicles and barbecues. And if you can't do that, you should go back to school because it's pretty obvious. You know what I mean? It's like, if you can't work it out, you're not trying because it's not a very complicated process. I'm not trying to explain folded space like in, Interstellar, where they're explaining folded space with like and it's just like, oh, okay. There's so much exposition in Nolan films. And Tenet was just gobbledygook. But I adore his filmmaking. Like to me, Dunkirk is one of the great films because there's no dialogue. Like he just shows you a war, and it's just wall to wall, like brilliantly directed and shot spectacle. Whereas Tenet, I'm just like if I turned if I could have a function, you have a subtitles function. If I could have a function to turn the dialogue off, I'd rather watch that film as a silent film because as a silent film, it's one of the most beautiful, brilliant, epic action films I've ever seen. But when you listen to the dialogue, I'm just like, this is like, I don't know what this is like. It's like watching ducks quack at each other. Like there's no reference. It's all just, it's all just words.
So I wanted to ask you, for a while there, it looked like you guys were trying to get Wyrmwood transitioned to like a TV show or a streaming series or something like that. And you even put out like a short, like kind of conceptual version online, which eventually looks like it got kind of transferred into Wyrmwood Apocalypse. It's all in like this underground government facility where they're basically torturing people and sucking stuff out of orifices and things of that nature. So I wanted to know what happened with the TV show idea and why did you decide to transition it into a feature film sequel?
Yeah, I mean, I just assumed that we'd be able to get a TV series up. Like the first one did okay, and like I kind of did a sort of online poll on Facebook, and just it's one of the most successful posts we've ever done, and we got thousands of people like commenting on it. I think like 10,000 comments. Like I couldn't even get through them all. Where people were just like, "Oh, TV, do a show, do a show," and I was just like, "Okay, well, there's clearly." People want that, and also like you look at the shows that get up and you're like, oh, there's mountains of shit. Like, I mean, we must be able to get a show. And so we put together probably the pitch deck of the best pitch deck I've ever been involved in. It's like this big, like 50-page thing with like concept art and like the whole, the whole Bible shows, in very clear detail the whole first season, concepts for second season. We wrote the pilot episode, and then we went out and we spent like I think it was $50,000 like on a proof of concept, like a little 7-minute thing, which is by far the most popular online thing we've ever done. Like we released that online just to generate a bit of buzz on the TV show, and we had 36 million people watch it. Oh man, it went super viral, and like it's super popular, and then we just took it around and nobody would pick it up, and we're just like, we wanted to do it at the minimum $1 million an episode, which sounds insanely large, but it's like, we didn't want to do it if we couldn't make the Breaking Bad of zombie TV shows. Like, there's no point in doing it if it's just going to look B-movie and shit. And so we needed a certain amount of money.
I think that video is what actually initially turned us on to this whole thing, because I saw that and I went, check this out.
Yeah.
And then that
we
turned
watched
us,
the
then
trailer.
that turned us on to the movie. And we're all like, holy crap, this is
incredible.
amazing.
I'll tell you the exact moment where we were all like, we have to watch this. And that was when we were like, is that a hot zombie?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a perfect segue, because I was going to ask you about the casting of, I believe the actress's name is Bianca.
Bianca Brady
as Brooke. Like, when we watched that, like, I've never seen like a zombie queen like that before. And I was like, oh shit. And that's funny because I follow her on Instagram and she seems like such a sweet, unassuming, like, oh, I'm at the beach today having lunch. And then you watch her in this movie and you're like, oh, I ain't fucking with her at all.
She's very sweet, and she actually comes across as almost shy, and and she's tiny. She's like a hobbit size. She's so small. But I love small actors, because small actors shoot really well. They make my sets look bigger. So I love small actors. But she looks 10 foot tall in the thing. No, she's such a beautiful person, but she does have a fucking edge, and she'll never show it to you, but I can see it, because directors can see that shit. And all of that edge comes out in her performances. Like, she's just an animal between action and cut, and then sweet as after that. But yeah, she was funny. We were casting around because it was obviously like a super important role, and we had no money, so we were just going to just friends who we knew who had actors, and friends we knew who had actors as friends. And we had cast Jay Gallagher, who I knew. He went to NIDA, which is the National Institute of Dramatic Art, and so he had connections with some of the best actors in Sydney. And we just couldn't find anybody, and like, nobody was right that we were auditioning for Brooke. And I was just like, oh, we're just gonna have to cast somebody and just suck it up, because it's a low budget film, whatever. And then I was just talking to some mate of mine who I work with, and I'm like, oh, I can't find this role. And he goes, well, my roommate's an actor. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, yeah, I'm sure she is. Then I kind of looked at what she's done, and I'm like, oh, like, okay, she's kind of perfect. And I met with her, and she was funny as fuck, and just totally out there, and didn't give a shit about any of my, inappropriately violent sort of scripts. She thought that was funny. She had the right dark sense of humor, and we just cast her, and we were shooting 1 week later. Like, she just got in costume, we sprayed sweat and blood all over her, and off we went.
So in the first movie, she spends the majority of the time in the back of that moving horror lab. So I have two questions about that. Is one, how grueling was it to film in the back of a moving truck in Australia? Was it like, did you do it in the wintertime? Was it cool? How did you guys make that work as far as making those shots work?
The shots with the truck?
Yeah. We
just did it. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's footage of me, like, we were so dodgy, man, because we shot it outside, like outside of any kind of funding body. We were just a bunch of rogue idiots. Like, we just took cameras and walked into the bush. You're not allowed to do that. Like, you have to get permission from the national parks and shit. And we just went and just shot and like didn't care, because we didn't have money to pay for locations. And so we just did it. And there's footage of me out in the mountains in Hat Hill Road. We were doing a sequence where we were filming inside the truck, and it was quite an emotional exchange between Brooke and Benny, I think. And so the engine couldn't be running. And so we just, there was a hill that goes for about 10 kilometers. And so we just turned the engine off and just glide down the hill in the truck, which is super dangerous, because you have to turn the engine on before the brakes can apply. So you could literally die. And there's footage of me. I don't even remember this. I just saw the footage going, what the fuck did I do that? Like, I'm sitting on the bonnet of the truck with a little monitor, watching the scene unfold as we're like just gliding down this hill at 40 k's an hour. No brakes engaged. I'm not even tied to the truck. Like, I'm just sitting on this like metal beast that weighs 2 tons. Like, and I guess I have to be close, because the monitor, if I'm too far away, the monitor breaks down. I can't be in the other car. I can't be inside the truck because there's not enough room. So I'm just sitting on the bonnet like an idiot. Like, You know, and like, I mean, I could have died, and I'm sure we did 7 or 8 takes. I could have died in any of those 8 takes. And, you know, you'd get down to the bottom of the hill, and, you know, the dude driving the truck had just engaged the engine, you know, because he can see the rock wall coming up that we don't want to hit. He'd engage the engine, engage the brakes, and then we all live. But yeah, we just went out and shot it, and we couldn't afford green screen. You know, usually you do something like that in a green screen studio. We couldn't afford any of that. We just had to go out and shoot.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what's funny is we actually did a whole episode on the Mad Max movies, and when we were doing that, like, you know, I did a lot of research into how, like, George Miller, when they were doing the first Mad Max, like, they had no idea what they were doing. They'd never done a movie before. There were no like professional stunt teams. They were just kind of making it up as they went, and you know, they're didn't follow any safety standards like whatsoever. It was amazing. No one got killed on that production. So like it's kind of, it's honestly inspiring to see filmmakers kind of following those footsteps in the guerrilla filmmaking.
Australians are crazy,
well,
man.
Somebody did get killed on I can't remember now whether it was Mad Max 1 or Mad Max 2, but yeah, somebody did get killed. Yeah. So there you go. When I was 7 years old, I was at a party that my parents were at, and you know, there's all these drunk adults wandering around, and I got introduced to this like 6.5 foot behemoth of a dude. Like, there were a bunch of bikies at the party, and like this dude with a massive, looks like a Viking, massive beard, long hair, and they knew that I loved Mad Max, and so they brought him over and they said, you know, this is Bob. He was in Mad Max 2, and he's got 100 stitches in his head from Mad Max 2. And like he pulled his hair apart and he showed me, and he looked like Frankenstein. He just had like, it's like the top of his head had come off and they had to stitch it back on. He came off a bike at 100 k's an hour and just like nearly died. Like his brains nearly came out of his head. And I just remember staring at this Viking with 100 stitches in his head, just thinking, oh, I want to make movies.
There was that one dude in Mad Max, I think it was the second one.
Yeah.
Where he crashes and he breaks his leg. And you can see in the film, he goes flipping out and over the freaking camera. And you're like, oh yeah, they just left that in.
Well, I had heard that there was actually an incident on the first Wyrmwood where Bianca Brady's stunt double almost got really badly injured. Is that true?
Yeah, that was horrifying. Yeah. So towards the end, we did get stunties in, and thank God we did, because there were a few car stunts that were just so dicey. And so we got actually the same stunt guy who did the stunts for Mad Max 3 to be our stunt coordinator. So he, you know, I mean, he could do this stuff in his sleep. But yeah, there was an issue. I mean, there's the scene where she needs to jump from the back of the big moving truck onto Barry's truck. And it's not a hard stunt, but the stakes were huge because she is jumping onto a moving vehicle that has actual metal spikes on it. And because we didn't really, I mean, usually on a film like that, those spikes would be rubber, you know, but we couldn't do that, and we couldn't take the spikes off and then replace them digitally. We, you know, and we had a good long conversation with the stunt coordinator, and he was like, look, we should be okay. Like, it'll be all right. And we did it once and it was okay, but like everybody got together and went, I think we can do better. You know, we can go a bit faster and we can make the jump look a little bit more spectacular. And so we did it, and her foot slipped in blood. Like, and again, it's just one of those things on a low budget. You just, and I was watching from the thing, and she goes under the vehicle, and it's going pretty quick. Like it's only going about 10 k's an hour, but 10 k's an hour is enough to kill someone when you're talking about a 2-ton vehicle with spikes running somebody over. And I saw it happen. She went under the vehicle. Like, it looked like she got impaled on the spikes and then got dragged under the wheel. That's what it looked like. Oh my DOP made this sound. Excuse me. He goes, oh! Which is not what you want to hear at that point. Like, that is just not a sound you want to hear, because I'm like, oh my God, when a grown man is screaming like somebody's 70-year-old grandmother, we're in trouble. And I just went, there goes my career. Like, and then I thought, oh my God, it's so horrible that maybe somebody died. But my first thought was, there goes my career. yeah, we're fucked. We'll never finish this film. God, I hope she's alive. I hope she's okay. Blah blah blah. And we all start running towards the thing, and I see these hands come up under the thing. I see Nando, who's Bianca's stunt double, drag herself up, jump up, look around, like laughing, like a big smile on her face, going, "Well, that was close." And that's stunties for you, man. So what had happened? Like, she was so kind of unfazed, like it was weird. I found out later that she was, but like that's just what stunties do. Like they go to a place where they're okay. But what had happened was her foot slipped and she jumped, right? So in midair, our stunt driver went, "That's not the right, she's like, that's not the right trajectory." He slammed the brakes on as soon as her foot left the air, because he's that fucking good. Like his reflexes were insane. So what happened was she hit a vehicle that was stopped. Thank fuck. Like, it didn't look like that from like where I was standing. It looked like, she got hit, but that's what happened if you look at the footage. So she hit a stopped vehicle, and she's that good that as she was falling, she positioned her hands between the spikes to land in between. So her hands landed on the bull bar in between the spikes, and she went under what was a stopping vehicle. And so she went under, and all that happened was her arm cut open. And that's when my DOP made the screaming woman sound. And then she jumped up, and we're like, "Okay, let's go to the hospital. This is fucked." And she's like, No, we've got another stunt to do. Let's keep shooting. And so, like, if you look closely, the next shot of her in the film is her on the bonnet while the bonnet's like the truck's racing along, and she flips over to look forwards. There's like her arm is torn apart. So she wouldn't go to the hospital until she finished her next piece of work.
What a pro.
And again, like, stunties are just tough as fuck, man. But yeah, like, that was a very scary moment. And that's a moment where I was like, thank God we have a crack stunt team on for this section of the shoot. And thank God we didn't try and be heroes, because otherwise a girl would be dead,
Wow.
Wow.
I love stunt people.
Yeah.
They're the greatest.
They're amazing.
They're great. Speaking of stunt people, I wanted to ask you just real briefly about the monster in Apocalypse, where the Surgeon General's controlling him. How did that come about? Because I just love the whole aesthetic and look of that thing with the claw arm, and that had to have been like a really fun kind of sequence to shoot, right? I mean, it's just everything that went involved. Even the Surgeon General, he's my favorite character of the whole show, to be honest with you. The actor that plays him is so over the top and just owns the role. And it's just, I just want to know a little bit more about those guys. They're so fun.
I want to know. Yeah, I want to know where you got everybody who wears a yellow suit in your movies is creepy as fuck.
Yeah, it just seemed like it would have been such an absolute fun thing to be involved with these things. And so,
which one did you prefer, the one in Road of the Dead or the one in Apocalypse? I'm just interested, just from a protagonist point of view, antagonist point of view. Who do you think is the better villain?
I like the one in Apocalypse more, a little bit better, but it's just because I haven't seen the other one in a while to really compare.
I liked Road of the Dead.
Yeah,
there was something about the guy in Road of the Dead where he was like enjoying his job a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
like he was dancing to music and shit while he was doing that. That was creepy.
Yeah, he seemed like a little more unhinged mentally.
Yeah.
And then in Apocalypse, he just seemed like he was not quite so unhinged, but like diabolical, evil, and hooked on drugs.
I mean, they're both kind of very different performances. Like the first one was played by Baron Schwerdt in Road of the Dead, who's a classically theatre-trained actor, and his big emphasis was on the humanization. So he was taking my insanity and my crazy ideas, and he constantly was saying, we need to humanize him, which I think is like super smart. And then in the second one, we just went insane and just went, let's make him a cross between Hunter S. Thompson and a lizard. And like, I had such fun shooting it with Nick Boshier, who's like one of the great Australian comedians alive at the moment. He's so fucking funny. But we went very deep, and I think we Heath Ledgered it. We wanted to do a Heath Ledgery, jokery, insane villain performance. And I actually think I look back on it now, and I wish that I'd started in Apocalypse with him being super nice and then moved towards Hunter S. Thompson and the Lizard. I think because in real life, Nick Boschia is like one of the friendliest people you'll ever meet. He's like, hey man, like what's happening? Oh, I really love the script, and oh, it's fantastic. And and it would be interesting if he came out of the dungeon, that sort of, when the doors open to this kind of underground Grecian hellscape, he should walk out and go, hey man, how you going? Like, I think that would have been more interesting. And then as, we go through the 90 minutes of the film, he becomes more and more progressively unhinged. But, what do you do? Like when you're shooting that fast and you have, so little rehearsal time, it's hard to know. The biggest difference with Apocalypse was we had 6 weeks and no overtime. So it was just like bang, 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 shoot, can't talk about it, don't have time. Whereas with Wyrmwood Road of the Dead, because we shot it over 3.5 years, we had no money but all the time in the world. So, we would be reviewing footage and then thinking about it for months before we went on to do the next bit. And so we were able to look at footage for a long time and sit with it and do rewrites over years. And so, like, even though Apocalypse has a much bigger feel and has a lot more money, the thing that Wyrmwood has is it's just a lot more layered. And I don't even mean intelligently layered. I just mean creatively layered. We were able to make fixes in the script and expand characters in ways that you don't have unless you have the time to do that. And because the budgets are so small these days, you just don't have time to create as you go anymore because you're so stuck to time, schedule.
Alex and I were
money,
wondering just a little while ago how you guys came up with these ideas to put these sliding body boxes on the sides of the trucks.
I love that.
It's and all these kind of stuff with the methane hoses.
Yeah, it's like a gas cartridge. You just slide it in your truck and it's got a zombie inside of it. And when the zombie's out of gas, you just replace it with a new one. I'm like, this is freaking brilliant, dude.
Yeah.
My brother came up with that and it was out of sheer necessity. In the first film, like, we'd get a scene together and then we'd, get the zombies and the prosthetics and buy the costumes and the blood and all that kind of stuff. And then we'd kind of go, oh, fuck, there's a zombie in the back of the truck. And you'd have to build a zombie just to sit in the back of the truck. Or you'd go, even if you go, well, let's hide his head and not have prosthetics, you still got to find a body to put in there. And often it was Tristan, my brother. And he'd be like, fuck, I got to get in that fucking truck again. Like, and he just got sick of it. And so he goes, mate, like, we're not putting zombies in the back of the truck anymore. And I'm like, yeah, but that's the concept. We have to do that because it runs on zombies. And he's like, no, hear me out. He goes, we're going to put tool drawers in the back of the truck. And those tool drawers are standard things that like Aussie builders have. So they've got their utes, I guess you guys call pickup trucks, and they have tool drawers. And so you slide them out and all their tools are in there. And so he goes, no, we're going to do that. We're going to buy a Hilux that has those. And so we'll install them and, and it'll be battery units. And I was just like, that's fucking brilliant. And that's why he and I work so well together because he just comes up with these crazy ideas and we just do them. So yeah, that was 100% out of him not wanting to get in the back of the fucking truck again. So like that was just a good idea born out of practical necessity.
So going back to the giant cyborg zombie thing, who came up with that concept and how did you guys deliver it on screen? Like, did you get a prop department? Who was in charge of the makeup for that thing? Because it was freaking
It was
insane.
awesome.
I call that guy Zombinator.
Zombinator?
Yeah.
I love it. Zombinator.
I can't remember who came up with the idea. It's all a bit mishmash now. But in the TV series, we had the concept of radio-controlled half-cybernetic zombies that had been created by the soldiers to battle Brooks, puppet hordes. And so we had, in the TV series, we got this great idea where, these cyber zombies would be stomping around, looking for Brooke and Barry, and there'd be a bunch of soldiers in a truck, all with VR helmets on, like controlling the zombies themselves. And her hordes of zombies would have to fight these cyber zombies, almost like these pitched gladiator battles, which I still think is a pretty cool idea. And, when we came to make the film, everybody told us to fuck off when we wanted to make the TV series, basically because Walking Dead, like every studio we went to just went, great idea, love it, maybe one day, not today, Walking Dead's taking up all the zombie space, so forget it. And so we just went, and like when you think about it, I very naively went into the idea of a TV series thinking, if we can get a movie up, we can get a TV show up. When you think about it, you go, okay, let's say that we're asking for $800,000 per episode, times that by 10 for the series. That's like $10 million. How are you going to convince somebody to give you $10 million when there's not a clear progress to profit? And, if you're in competition with another massive, giant zombie franchise in TV, that nobody wanted to take that risk. And so we just decided, hell with it, we'll just make a low budget feature film because we know we can do that. And just try and make Wyrmwood Apocalypse for about $1 million. I think in the end it'll probably cost $2 million. And then, with all the add-ons and all the deferrals and all that kind of stuff, it'll probably be listed as about $4 million, but we probably had about $2 million to spend. And then you go, okay, well, we're not going to have hordes of cyber zombies. We can have one. So we better come up with like a really awesome set piece for that zombie because it's going to cost a shit stack of money. And so that's why we came up with that whole end sequence where, he's controlling it and she's controlling her zombies, and his VR control of the zombie mirrors her control of her zombies. Like a good antagonist should somewhat mirror the protagonist. And so, he can control zombies too, but he needs, to parse it through technology. She can do it, just from the heart and from her own superpowers. But, they're mirror images of each other, and that kind of worked. It gave me the opportunity to have 3 separate pieces of action all occurring in 3 different rooms at the same time. So I had to storyboard the shit out of that to make sure that it worked chronologically and consistently, and that was super fun to cut. But the creature itself, we got together with a company called the Makeup Effects Group, led by Nick Nicolau. We've been working with him for years. He did the demons for us in a short film that we did called Demon Runner, which was the proof of concept for a film called it was called Necromancer, and then by the time the studio had tinkered, it was then called Necrotronic, which I still think is a weird name. It sounds like a 90s techno album, and nobody can remember it, but what do you do? So they made the demon in that and the wraiths in that film. And so when it came time to make a creature, our head of makeup, Marielle McClory, who's brilliant, did all the zombies, but she wouldn't be able to do the cyborg zombie at the same time. So we gave Nick and his team at Makeup Effects Group just that one thing. It's just like, we just need you to spend months making this one creature. And they did, and they bought it in for an incredibly small amount of money. And it came on set and just looked amazing. We had the same stunt guy who we always use, a guy called Alex Juiceman, and I think we killed him maybe 8 times in the first movie. It was like 8 different zombies. He was about 7 different zombies throughout the shorts that we did, and he was a wraith and and the demon in Demon Runner and the demon in Necrotronic. We've killed him more times than I care to mention, which is weird because I do actually like him, but I do kill him a lot. And so he came on board again. He's great, yeah, and he's super thin, and you can just throw him through walls, and that's what you want. You want a thin man you can throw through walls, or woman, but they have to be thin so that you can once you put the prosthetics on a thin person, they look kind of normal. But if you're putting prosthetics on somebody who's like big and chunky, it just looks ridiculous. They end up looking like, like John Cena has been attacked by bees. Yeah, I mean, it was great, but like it came on set and it's like, it can't move very well. Like Alex can't see very well. And he's got this giant, like wooden cyber claw arm that's wooden. And it came on set and I was like, that weighs a ton. And so he's got to work out how to hit people with it, and move in a space that is effectively smaller than the average bathroom, Anyway, but it was super fun. I always wanted to do like a cyborg zombie, and we finally got to do it. And I think it looks pretty good.
It looks great.
So, Kiah, I wanted to ask you about. So after the TV show kind of failed, and you guys decided to pivot to a sequel, how did you go about getting the budget for that? Because the original Wyrmwood, it was just you guys paid for it out of pocket. But the sequel to it is a little bit bigger budget, and it seems like a studio film. So I was just curious as how you went to go about producing it.
Well, quite an old friend of mine, a guy called Blake Northfield, is a producer, and he's like a lot younger than me. He's like 10 years my junior, and suddenly, like, he just made 4 or 5 films, and I kind of blinked and went, Blake is actually a successful producer. How did that happen? Like, um, and I can't remember. I think he might have contacted us and said, "What's going on with Wormwood? Like, are you guys making that? What are you doing?" And we're like, "Oh, I don't know. We're thinking about it." And he goes, "Look, I'll produce it. I can get you the money for sure, and I'll get out of the way creatively and let you guys make whatever film you want." And I was just like, "Yeah, this guy, I like him. He's a friend. He can get money because he's produced 5 films." And he just said the magic words of, "I'm going to creatively get out of your way and let you make the film you want to make. Why would I not do this?" So we just signed on literally off that phone call, like within 2 minutes. And then he went off and chased money for 6 months and got it up, you know. It's fiendishly impossible to get financing. I mean, I know you guys are all film fans. I don't know if you know much about financing. I don't know if you know much about the financing world, but like my rule on financing is nobody wants to give you money ever under any circumstances for any film, and that's just a fact. That's where you start from, and it's impossible. And Blake did a bit of voodoo, you know, borrowed a little bit from here, got some stuff from there, you know, secured some financing from Screen Australia, got some more financing from Create New South Wales. These are Australian funding bodies, and thank God they exist, or Australian films wouldn't get made. Studio Canal came on board once we put the whole thing together. You know, they weren't making super interesting noises. They were kind of like, "Oh, it's been 7 years, really? I don't know." And then we got the whole thing together, and they're like, "Oh, you've got it kind of together. Oh, well, if we're making it, then sure." You know, like, and that's the thing. Funding bodies only want to finance something that is a sure thing. So if you've got a package that's already going, suddenly everybody's your friend. It's quite funny. And so they jumped on board and went, "Well, if you're making it, of course we'll make it." You know, so it was nice to get them back on board because Studio Canal were a huge part of, you know, the legitimization and the success of the first film. So it was really great once they jumped on board. Because then it was a real film, you know. Yeah, I mean, Blake just got the money. You know, I know how to write a film, I know how to make a film, but you know, this industry has taught me that I don't know how to get financing. It's impossible. I don't know how it happens, and so I've kind of stepped away from all of that. You know, me and my brother, you know, did a fair bit of producing and realized pretty quickly that the industry is just like, I don't know, man. It's like the multiverse of madness. None of it makes sense. It's impossible to get things greenlit. And so that's why we tend to work with people like Blake or, you know, the dudes who produced Necrotronic. You sort of need to sidle up next to somebody who knows how money works and make the film with them. And that's how Wyrmwood Apocalypse got made, because Blake knows how money works.
So speaking of creative choices, one of the interesting things that I noticed when I watched Wyrmwood Apocalypse is that you have a character played by Luke McKenzie who dies in the first movie. And then he comes back as his twin brother and the main character of Wyrmwood Apocalypse. And I was just wondering if you make more Wyrmwood movies, are you going to continue that where you just keep bringing back the same actors as their twins?
Well, that wasn't the plan. We wrote the character of Reese specifically for a star, like a Hemsworth. You know, we didn't know, but you know, and then we went to make it, and we had a pretty small budget. You know, I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, and it is a B movie. It's like a super fun franchise, but I think film nerds like it more than, you know. It's not the sort of thing that's going to attract a superstar, put it this way. And so the thing that attracts a superstar to a project like this is straight up cash. You go, "I'll give you $1 million for 4 weeks' work. How about that?" And we didn't have $1 million. Like, we just didn't have that money, and so we couldn't really attract a star that meant anything, really. And then when you know, you do that thing where you do the casting, and like, you know, the stars, the IMDb rating gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you're going, okay, we're not even looking for stars anymore. We're just looking for actors. And me and my brother decided to approach this as if this was going to be our last film. And like at that point, I was actually thinking it might be. You know, I I was honestly in a position where I was thinking this may be the last film I ever get to make, and so I'm gonna do it for the experience and for the heart, and to close a loop that meant a lot to me, because the first film isn't a film, it's an experience that occurred over 3.5 years with people who I love, who feel like family, and I wanted to close that loop, which is not a loop of film or success or um, um, ambition. It's a film. It's a loop of like the best creative experience of my life with people who I love, and like that's what I wanted. And we just thought, who's the guy who's going to have our back and make sure this experience is beautiful? Because with a leading man, if you cast a great actor who's also a dick, you're going to get a good performance, but they're going to make your life hell for a year. And that could have happened. You know, it's always a risk when you're casting, you know, because you've got to basically get in bed with somebody for a period. You're that intimate, you know, like every day you're going to be making them do things that they're scared of, and you're going to be covering them in mud and challenging them and making them, you know, not eat things and exercise so that their body can look a certain way. Like you're putting somebody through torture. And if you're doing that to somebody who doesn't love you, they're going to resent you, and it might be hard. Might be okay, but it might be horrible. And so we just thought, you know what, the best guy we know is Luke Mackenzie. Just as a human being, as a poetic soul, like as an actor, I've always wanted to see him in a lead role like this. He's just one of my beautiful friends. And we thought, well, we can't use him because we killed him. And then we just went, well, why don't we do that cheap soap opera move of making him his own twin brother?
Yeah.
It worked.
And it's funny, but weirdly, it actually led to a thing that was important, because if you think about it from a writing perspective, Reese is coming into a very, very predetermined world with characters who had very fertile arcs in the first film. And he's a new guy and is completely unconnected to Brooke and Barry, which means it's an uphill battle because there's a lot of emotional exposition bullshit scenes that we have to write in order to get them up to speed with each other. Now, if they come in and those two are the ones who killed his brother, he has skin in the game immediately. As soon as they meet, they say, didn't we already kill you? And he says, that was my fucking brother. And immediately it's like, boom, there's fertile emotional ground between all parties. And so actually casting Luke was the right move emotionally. And also we had a hurdle that we had to get over. Where I immediately went, wait a minute, he can't be on the surface guy because Reese was written to be an A negative betraying other A negatives, which was great. Like that was our original idea. But then we're like, if we cast Luke, he's got the same blood type as his brother, so he can't be an A negative betraying other A negatives. And so we had to come up with the idea of the pills simply because we cast Luke. And the pills actually, I think, is one of the best things in the film, because you've got this little device that allows you to live up on the surface. And, you know, you've got that great scene at the end where, you know, he wants to throw away his pills and kill himself because he finds out that, spoiler alert, the pills are made of ground up A negative survivors, which is horrific and brilliant at the same time. So he's eating, like he's this guy who is unwittingly eating like the bodies of innocents in order to survive up on top. So even when he finds out that he's, you know, been lied to and cajoled into killing innocent people on the understanding that he's, you know, attempting to solve the virus, when in actual fact he's just delivering people to the colonel and the surgeon to keep them alive. He's just keeping two guys alive by killing dozens of people through the months. And when he realizes that, he can't even say, well, you know, like I'll just stop doing that, because he's eating them. It's so much work. He's got his sins inside him. It's going to eat him alive. And so in the end, he wants to throw the pills away and kill himself and whatever. And she says, you know, the Maxi character comes up and says, no, you're going to keep taking these pills so that these people haven't died in vain. You're going to keep taking them, and you're going to help us to save more people, so that everybody, all these things that you've done, you know, won't be in vain, and you can get your soul back. So actually, the casting of Luke solved all these writing problems and allowed us to expand into places that we hadn't even thought of. I'm glad that there wasn't a Hemsworth available.
I think the thing that I love about bringing him in as like a twin brother and embracing that kind of like trope is that it kind of paves the way to bring Benny back, where like Leon Burchill shows up in a different role.
Benny again.
I love the casting in Apocalypse when they're like Uncle Benny basically is the one who told them that they could trust Brooke, and I was like, these actresses look just like him. It's amazing. Are they actually related in any way, or is it not the fact?
The two sisters?
Are they related to the actor who plays Benny at all? Because they look spot on. They look
and they're from other sides of the country too. So Kiah Roache is, I think, is she from Melbourne or Brisbane? Melbourne or Brisbane? I can't remember. I know she lives in Melbourne. But Kiah Roache is Grace, the older sister, and Shantae Barnes-Cowan is the younger sister, Maxie, and she's from a very small town about 4 hours outside of Adelaide called Whyalla, and she's not even really an actor. Like, she'd only acted very briefly in some TV things, so this was her first big role, and then she went immediately on to star in a TV series called Firebite. So she's going to go. I
love both. The inclusion of the new characters was incredible across the board. I have a question about Brooke and Barry though. You did some pretty extreme things to them in Apocalypse. And I'm watching this, and you talked about like kind of bringing this full circle because you were thinking that it might have been like the last movie you were going to be making. In that final moment where they sacrifice themselves to save the others and the building explodes around them, like I was like, oh shit, they went full freaking Game of Thrones. Like George R.R. Martin wrote this freaking movie. They're killing off my favorite characters. And then like almost like right before the credits runs, you see zombified Barry and full on zombie Queen Brooke come out of the room like all burnt up and fucked up looking. I'm like, do you have a storyline for them going forward, or was that just left open-ended?
Is there going to be a third movie in the Wyrmwood trilogy?
Yeah, there's 100% going to be a third one. As long as somebody gives us the money, we'll do it. I've got super awesome plans, and I'm going to bring back Benny too. Like I didn't see a way that I could bring back Benny. I just wasn't able. In like we were going to bring him back in flashback. But we couldn't afford those scenes, so we couldn't bring Leon back in.
One word: clone.
No, I got a better idea. I've got a thing with Leon. Even though he gets shot in the head in the first one, I've got a whole arc for him. And Barry, actually, they're gonna come back together in a really, really epic and awesome way. And Bianca's got a pretty cool arc, and we're going to close the loop too, so you'll finally find out what was causing the virus in the first place. And we've got so many different ideas for the third one, but we probably will be able to make it. From what I understand, it's selling really well in the US. Like, the reviews have been good enough to like justify it alone almost. Like, we got a killer review in the New York Times, which is like that's as good as you get in terms of like high class reviewers. So, which is great, because what that means is, all the nerds love us, like all the film proper.
Yeah, all the salty nerds.
We're here.
But we've also got the snooty press. So if you can get the film nerds and the snooty press, you're all good, And so, and if it makes money on top of that, then there's no real reason not to make the third one.
I love it.
I'm excited for it.
That was my last question. I just wanted to know what kind of ideas you had for Brooke and Barry, because I thought legit that you killed them off in that scene, and I thought it was a heartfelt ending for those characters, and I was upset because I love the characters, but at the same time I was like, okay, if they're gonna do it, that would be the way to go. And then they pop out of the freaking burning building, and I'm like, oh shit!
and you can't tell us now because spoilers.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
So I don't want no spoilers. So.
Did you consider killing them off in that scene and then change your mind later and film them escaping?
100%. Yeah, we did. Because we were thinking that this might be the end. We went into this like pretty low expectations from the industry. It's kind of like we were just in a dip, man. Like, I mean, Necrotronic didn't make a huge amount of money. And when that happens and the reviews weren't great, it's actually quite a fun film. It's a super fun film. But that doesn't fucking matter. What matters in the industry is, did it make money, and are the reviews like across the board good? It was pretty expensive for an Australian film, and then didn't really connect because it's like wall-to-wall fucking exposition, which I think is always a problem. And it was a film that didn't know what it was. We wanted it to be like what we usually do, which is a horror with laughs. And about 2 weeks into pre-production, we realized that our co-producers were making a comedy with some horror. And it's like, oh no, they're different films. This is going to be a total nightmare. And so, yeah, like it was hard to get anything going after Necrotronic. And we thought this may be our last film. We'll just bang out a quick low budget Wyrmwood and then, just do something else. So that's where we were. And we were thinking, well, I guess we've got to end Brooke and Barry, and we've got to do it somehow. And the reason why Wyrmwood 2 isn't as funny as the first one is we got sort of forced to push laughs into Necrotronic where we didn't want them, and so we wanted to make a more serious film. We wanted to make, if you look at Mad Max 1, it's funnier than Mad Max 2, and we're like, we want to make Mad Max. We want to make, if this is the last film we get to make, I want to make a real film. I want it to feel like like this epic Grecian myth. I don't want it to just be a laugh fest. And so, that's kind of what it was. And we were thinking we might have to end Brooke and Barry because this may be the last film we ever make. And then halfway through, I was just like, fuck that. Like, I think we're going to keep making films.
I would legit lose my shit if our podcast caused him to be like, I'm making the third fucking movie.
The people like it. Yes.
I've got a whole story in my head, and all we got to do is, like, if somebody's going to pay for the script, I'll write it tomorrow. Like, I could write this thing so quick. Like, I know what it's going to be, and I've already started sort of writing down notes and ideas, and I'm like, yeah, this could rock. And yeah, like Brooke and Barry are a very big part of that, and like, I'm really glad.
Oh yeah, we are too. So I have two more questions for you. The first question is, have you guys considered doing any crowdfunding for the third movie? Because, by now the franchise has built up such a hardcore fan base that I would think that everyone would be willing to chip in to make sure, like, the third movie at least, can be kicked off. Have you guys looked into doing anything like that?
No, I'm sort of done with crowdfunding. It's a lot of work, and, you got to get all the perks to everybody. And like, it's really just not really what I want to be doing at this point. Like, I if I can't get funding from like the industry to do things normally, I'm just like, I'm 43. I got 2 kids, like, I'm just like, crowdfunding is something I think young filmmakers can do because they got time. Like, crowdfunding is, all of the creative, all of the producing, all of the marketing, like everything is on you if you do it correctly. And I'm not somebody who could just do crowdfunding and then not give the perks back. Like, I can't do that, and it's just a full-time job. And so to me, I'm like, I'd rather go, the normal funding routes. So that's to get, Screen Australia or whomever, or, a distributor, or perhaps even a studio to stump up for a bit of cash to get the ball rolling on the script, and then we make the movie with normal funding. The other thing about crowdfunding is, even if you're good, you're only going to get about 40 grand. Like, you can't make a film with 40 grand. Like, I mean, even the best crowdfunding things, you might get 100 grand. You can't even really make a film with 100 grand. Like, not a Wyrmwood 3 that would mean anything. Like with 100 grand, I could make something that doesn't look as good as Wyrmwood 1, because Wyrmwood 1, like I said, we had no money but 3.5 years. Like, I don't have 3.5 years just to give to something. So, like, there's just not enough money to justify it. So I've been very successful in the crowdfunding world, but I can't go back and do that. Like, it's got to be proper financing.
So my second question was, when I was watching Wyrmwood Apocalypse, there are scenes where, like, people are drinking like vials of blood in order to keep them from going full zombie. I was a little bit confused about what was that blood from, and why was it keeping them from going full zombie?
Is it just regular blood, or is there something special about it?
It's A negative blood.
It's a specific blood type.
Oh, okay.
That are immune, right?
It's like the pills are ground up A negative people.
Yeah.
Oh.
So whatever is in the A negative blood just gives them a shock back into their system. So with the hybrid zombies, they're sort of half A negative blood normal humans and half zombie. And so when they're zombieing out and moving towards the dark side of their personality, they need a bit of fresh A negative blood to jolt them back into their humanity.
I love the rules.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Rules are great.
That's what's so refreshing about this.
Yeah.
Is I just want to thank you for giving us a cool new zombie world to play in. I was one of those people that was completely burned out on The Walking Dead and the Romero zombies. The Walking Dead kind of just depressed me.
Mm-hmm.
I quit watching the show because it was just so blah. And when I saw this was just so much fun, and I could tell you guys loved what you were doing, and it just kind of like revitalized me to the whole genre.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's cool, and I love it, and I want a third one badly, and I really hope you guys are able to make it. So thank you for giving us this. It was really cool.
Oh, it's super fun to make, I stopped watching The Walking Dead when Frank Darabont got fired. I thought he was a very important part of that franchise from a creative point of view.
I'm really loving, like I said, the rules of this universe make it so easy for me to just fully invest in it and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I agree. This universe that you've built and created has been such a blast to kind of dive into. And once we saw that first that trailer for Apocalypse, and I saw a guy boxing a zombie with a birdcage over his head, I was like, I'm freaking in, dude. Yeah. This is great. So thank you for your creativity. Stay fit. Yeah, it's awesome, dude. Just it's wonderful, and I'm so glad we got to talk with you. It was just happenstance that we kind of like reached out to. I think it was on Twitter.
Yeah,
we're like, hey, you want to be on our show? And it was just so cool because like us, we're a pretty small channel, but we love movies and we love talking to people who create them. And we've had such great opportunities lately, and we're so happy to have you on and to chat with us and to kind of spread the word about this movie franchise that I think deserves more attention. Yeah. So thank you for being here.
Well, the great thing about the internet is, you can actually reach the people that you're talking about. And, in my case, it actually did make a difference. So to sit down and listen to you guys talk about, Wyrmwood in such a lovely way, it actually made me feel good about being a filmmaker again, So, what you guys are doing is actually weirdly more important than you might think. You're not just babbling about films, you're actually putting it out there into the world. And sometimes it does get back to the people. And so I thank you for that. Yeah.
Just keep on doing what you're doing. Part of the thing that we love about kind of like the movies that we love is the passion that the filmmakers put into it. And we can tell, especially with Wyrmwood, Road of the Dead, like just the passion that you guys had with the making of that movie. And it was very inspiring. And we love to support filmmakers like yourself who have that passion and keep plugging away and trying to make their vision a reality. So very good job with both films. And we hope to see the third one really soon.
Yeah. Yep. We'd love to have you back on after the third one too. If you're into it.
Well, put this out there and maybe this will get to the ears of somebody who has for the third one. And then we all get to have some fun.
That's not a bad idea.
I know.
All right.
I'm telling you, I'm having all the great ideas today. Echo cancellation, Apple TV.
Yes,
get Jonathan Tropper on the phone.
All right, sir. What's the best way for people to support you, or can they follow you on social media to keep up with the Wyrmwood universe?
Come and like our Facebook page. That's always good. We're on Instagram. We're rarely on Twitter, but occasionally we are. But really just buy the movie on iTunes. The more of those units we shift, the more likely it is we get to make W3. So
right on.
That's
I love it. Yeah. All right, V, where can they find you on the socials, bud?
Oh, you can find me at MattVader74 on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the places. Yep, all over.
Right on. Jude?
You can find me at I am Jude Juju on Instagram and on TikTok, or you can check out my webpage at thevoiceofjude.com.
All right. Matthew Kadish.
You can find me at Matthew Kadish, Kadish on Twitter. KadishBooks.com takes you to my Amazon page where you can check out my novels. And be sure to check out both Wyrmwood films that are available on Amazon for a really good deal, actually. And we'd highly recommend that you check them out because they're a lot of fun.
Make a great movie night, movie marathon.
Absolutely.
Have some beers. Have some VB.
VB and Wyrmwood.
Yeah.
We're watching it.
Play the Wyrmwood drinking game and die of liver poisoning.
I do that too often on Tuesdays. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. And again, thank you for being here. We loved having a chat with you about Wyrmwood. And by all means, everybody go check out the movies, help support them, help us get a number of a W3, I think. And I think that's going to be awesome. And I can't wait for it. So thank you again. And that's it for the podcast, everybody. Thanks for listening. Stay salty, my friends.